Good morning. April 30th today. 1 Kings 10 through 11 and Luke 21. What jumped out at me right away as I'm reading scripture today was Charles Dickens' Tale of Two City, I think it was called. But it was the best of times and the worst of times. That's kind of depicts the 1 Kings whole reading today. We see Solomon's plunder or splendor. He had gold and silver, and the Queen of Sheba came and presented stuff just to gain some wisdom. He had so much gold that he was making shields and cups and mugs and ornaments and all kinds of stuff. Because he had so much and he was so blessed. And a lot of times that's exactly when the fall happens, is when things are going too good and we start depending on ourselves and really not looking at how God has blessed us. Because if we go back to chapter 3, I believe it is, when Solomon prayed for wisdom, God promised him, he says, because you prayed for wisdom, I'm going to bless you with all this other stuff too. So he gave him the riches, he gave him the power and the authority and all that kind of stuff. But for Solomon, I'm not sure if it wasn't enough or really what was going on in his life. But he had like 700 wives, 300 concubines. And God got really displeased in chapter 11. He gets punished here. And he says, I'm not going to pull it from you, but your son, he's not going to be the king over all Israel. He'll have one tribe, but he's going to lose it, and that's because you didn't follow through with your again having a man after God's own heart, as David did. And here's Solomon. He's going to pretty much lose everything for his inheritances down the road. But with that, we look at complete punishment here. But to me, I see a lot of God's grace and His mercy being involved with this, because of how He did keep things. He did keep him in reign, his Solomon's son, and he didn't pull it from him right away. But there was consequences again, for not staying in line with God. But more than anything, it's His grace and His mercy, and we even see that, in Luke chapter 21. First of all, we see, God basically, Jesus basically telling, that this woman who just had a little bit was more faithful than the one who had riches, and sometimes that's really where the heart opens up, is when we actually have to sacrifice, and then we do see His grace and His mercy in the middle of all that, because the one who does give that little bit, the one who does sacrifice, it never fails. It seems that God blesses them in other areas, or even in their wealth. And I'm not talking about prosperity gospel here, people. I'm talking about God's blessing when we're faithful with a little bit. God gives us a lot to deal with and to take care of. And what we see here, is basically Jesus saying, you know what, you need to be watchful. You need to be watchful of where we are in our times, where we are in our lives, and really keep an eye on what's going on in our sphere of living. And again, through that we see God's grace. We do see His mercy. So some really good scripture. I love the story about the widow with a little bit, because if you know anything about the culture back then, when a woman lost her husband, she didn't inherit the property like they do today. The wife didn't get the oldest son did. And a lot of times, you know, they didn't take care of the mother. They didn't take care of them, and they had very little to live on. So they became poor and dependent on people. But you know, we've seen that a few different times in Scripture that you know, the poor and the widow, and I believe that's why Jesus says that we are to take care of the orphans and the widows and the oppressed. And with that, again, we see God's grace and mercy get poured into us and the people around us. So I just pray that you had a good read this morning, and for some reason, I kept thinking about that writing, you know, the best of times and the worst of times. And for me, it just made me step back a little bit and evaluate my life, where it is right now, and where it has been, and where do I want it to be. And again, it's about choices. You know, do I want to be in line with God and what He wants of me, or am I going to start depending on myself and the things that I've accumulated that I hang my hat on? And I never want to get to that point. I always want to be able to depend on God. I always want to do what He is requiring of me, and I want to be obedient to that. So again, I pray that Scripture was just a great eye-opener to you. And have a great day today, and I will see you in the morning.